The lecture hall was full of laughter. Professor Emily Carter, one of the toughest math instructors on campus, stood proudly beside a massive equation that covered half the board. With a smirk, she said, "If anyone here can solve this equation, I'll marry you." The class erupted in laughter. Some at the joke, some at her confidence. But in the back corner, the janitor, a quiet man in worn-out clothes, paused from sweeping. He looked up at the board, eyes narrowing as if the symbols were whispering to him. He smiled faintly and said under his breath, "Challenge accepted." The students laughed even louder. But Professor Carter's smile would soon vanish, because that janitor was about to change everything. "Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Because what you're about to hear isn't just another story. It's a reminder that genius can come from the most unexpected places. If stories like this make you stop and think, tap that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who believes in second chances. Together, we can remind the world that respect doesn't come from titles, it comes from truth. The day after that class, the story of Professor Emily's joke spread like wildfire across the campus. Students were still laughing about it the moment their proud professor challenged the janitor. "Can you imagine?" one student whispered. "The janitor solving a problem that even PhDs struggle with?" Another chuckled. "He probably doesn't even know what those symbols mean." They didn't know his name. They just called him the janitor. Every morning, before the first lecture, he came in with his old mop and a rusty cart of cleaning supplies. His gray uniform was always spotless, his shoes always shined. As if even in his simple life, he carried a quiet sense of pride. That afternoon, when Professor Emily walked into her lecture hall, she noticed something unusual. The same equation from yesterday, the one she'd used as a joke, was still written on the board. And under it, in small, neat handwriting, were a few numbers and symbols. It looked like someone had started working on it. She frowned. "Who's been messing with my board?" The class giggled. One of the students pointed toward the corner of the room. "The janitor was here early this morning, ma'am." "Maybe he was trying to solve it." The room burst into laughter again. Even Emily couldn't help but smirk. "Oh, really?" she said sarcastically. "Well, I suppose we should hire him as a math professor then." The janitor, standing near the door, froze. He didn't say a word, just lowered his eyes, quietly picking up his mop. A few students mocked him under their breath. As he left the room, someone whispered, "Maybe he's off to study algebra in the janitor's closet." The class roared with laughter. Professor Emily didn't stop them. She just smiled, proud, confident, a little arrogant. To her, it was harmless fun. To him, it was a wound he'd felt before. That night, the campus was silent. Classrooms empty, hallways dark. Except for one faint light coming from room 204, Emily's lecture hall. Inside, the janitor, whose name was Samuel Hayes, stood before the board, staring at that same equation. His hands were rough, cracked from years of work, but his grip on the chalk was steady. He began to write. Slowly at first, then faster. Each line unlocking a memory buried deep inside him. Years ago, Samuel wasn't a janitor. He was a brilliant mathematics student, one of the best. But when his mother fell ill and hospital bills mounted, he dropped out to work full-time, cleaning the same university halls where he once studied. He never blamed anyone. He just accepted life's cruel twist, until yesterday, when a woman's laughter reminded him of everything he'd given up. As the hours passed, chalk dust covered his fingers. Equations filled the board. He didn't even realize the sun was rising. When Emily entered her class the next morning, she froze. The massive equation was completely solved. Every symbol perfectly aligned. And beneath it, in small, humble handwriting, it read, "Respect has no degree." The class gasped. Some students clapped nervously, others whispered in disbelief. Emily felt her heart race. This can't be right, she murmured, walking closer. She recognized the handwriting, the janitor's. A mix of anger and embarrassment flushed through her face. Who told him to touch my board again? She snapped. But deep inside, something didn't feel like mockery anymore. It felt like defeat. Later that day, Emily found Samuel in the hallway, quietly replacing a light bulb. Mr. Hayes, she said coldly. He turned, surprised she even knew his name. Did you write that equation on my board? He hesitated. I just wanted to see if I still could. Emily frowned. Do you even realize how complicated that problem was? It's been unsolved for years. Samuel nodded. Not anymore. Her pride flared. Are you saying you solved it? He looked down, wiping his hands on his uniform. I'm saying, sometimes, people underestimate the ones who clean their floors. For a moment, Emily didn't know what to say. Her students were watching from a distance, phones out, recording. Her reputation, her pride, everything was on the line. So she laughed. Not a warm laugh, a cold, defensive one. Mr. Hayes, she said mockingly, I think you've been spending too much time around chalkboards. Leave the math to the professionals. Samuel nodded softly, gathering his tools. But as he walked away, he said something that made her stop. You once said you'd marry whoever solved that equation. He looked over his shoulder. Well, I hope your word means something, Professor. The hallway fell silent. Emily's face turned pale. She didn't laugh this time. For the first time in years, Professor Emily Carter couldn't focus on her morning lecture. Her mind kept replaying that line, respect has no degree. She'd brushed it off in front of her students, pretending it was nonsense. But deep down, something about that equation felt right. She couldn't explain it. It was a feeling only mathematicians understood, that strange spark when something impossible suddenly makes sense. That afternoon, she stayed behind after her class ended. The laughter and noise of the hallway faded until only silence remained. She turned toward the board where the janitor's solution still glowed faintly in chalk dust. Emily took a deep breath, picked up her glasses, and began reading through the lines. Every symbol was placed with purpose. Every formula connected seamlessly. Halfway through, her hand began to tremble. Her eyes widened in disbelief. This can't be real, she whispered. Her pulse quickened. She flipped through her notes, then opened her laptop, searching through academic archives, papers, and research journals. The equation, one of the most complex unsolved problems in modern mathematics, had baffled top scholars for over a decade. Yet the janitor's solution matched perfectly with theoretical results proposed by two world-renowned scientists just months ago. She leaned back in her chair, stunned. No way he could have, unless... For the first time, Emily felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. She looked around the empty room, as if someone might be watching. Then she whispered to herself, "Who is this man?" That evening, she walked to the janitor's office, a small, dimly lit storage room tucked in the basement of the old science building. It smelled of detergent and dust. Inside, Samuel Hayes sat quietly at a metal desk, reading a torn, yellowed math textbook. He didn't notice her at first. Emily stood at the door, watching silently. For a moment, she saw not a janitor, but a man completely lost in the beauty of numbers. When he finally looked up, she straightened herself. "Mr. Hayes," she began, "we need to talk." He set the book aside, wiping his hands. "Of course, Professor." Emily hesitated. "How did you solve it?" He smiled faintly. "You're the first person who's asked me how instead of if." She said nothing, her pride still holding her back. Samuel stood, walked toward the corner, and picked up a small notebook. Its pages were filled with years of handwritten notes, formulas, and sketches. "I used to be a graduate student here," he said softly. 15 years ago. My research was in advanced number theory." Emily blinked. That's impossible. There are no records. He interrupted gently. There wouldn't be. I dropped out. My mother had cancer. I couldn't afford to continue. For a moment, silence filled the air. Even Emily, who'd heard countless stories from struggling students, felt a sting in her chest. He continued. I took this janitor's job to pay off her medical bills. When she passed, I just stayed. I couldn't leave the place where I last felt like I mattered. Emily lowered her gaze. For the first time, she felt ashamed, not because he was smarter, but because she realized how easily she judged him. She spoke quietly. Samuel, that equation, it's never been solved before. Do you understand what this means? He looked at her, calm as ever. It means someone still believes knowledge belongs only to those with degrees on their walls. Later that night, Emily sat in her office, staring at her computer screen. She had sent the janitor's solution to a colleague at MIT, an expert in the field, asking for a private review. By midnight, her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Richards. Emily, whoever did this is a genius. The work is flawless. Where did you find it? Her throat tightened. She typed back, slowly. A janitor. There was a long pause before another message appeared. Then you didn't find a janitor, you found a mathematician the world needs to know. Emily leaned back, closing her eyes. Her mind was racing, with guilt, with awe, with realization. She remembered her own words in front of the class. If anyone can solve this equation, I'll marry them. She'd said it as a joke, but it had become the moment that humbled her entire career. The next morning, news began to spread through whispers again. But this time, it wasn't laughter. Students were murmuring in disbelief. Did you hear? The janitor actually solved it. They're saying it's going to be published. Emily walked into her class, but this time, the atmosphere was different. The same students who'd laughed now sat silently, eyes filled with respect. And at the back of the room, Samuel quietly mopped the floor. Just like always. She stopped mid-step, watching him for a moment. Then softly, almost to herself, she whispered, maybe the real lesson isn't about math, but about humility. The class fell silent, not sure what she meant. But she knew. And for the first time, so did he. The next morning, the entire university buzzed with whispers. On the main notice board, a single paper drew everyone's attention. It read, The Impossible Equation, solved by Samuel, the janitor. Students, professors, even the dean stood in disbelief. The same man who quietly swept their halls every morning had done what no one else could. In the math department, Professor Emily entered her class as usual. But the silence was heavier today. A student hesitated, then said, Ma'am, the janitor solved your equation. Emily blinked. That's not possible, she replied, forcing a faint smile. But inside, her heart trembled. She hurried to the notice board. When her eyes landed on the handwritten solution, her breath caught in her throat. Every line, every symbol, perfectly aligned. It was flawless. This was the same equation she had once presented at an international conference, and boldly declared unsolvable. Now, the truth stood before her. The problem had never been impossible. Her ego had made it so. Word spread fast. By noon, reporters crowded the campus. Students snapped photos. And Samuel, humble, quiet Samuel, was asked to come to the auditorium. Dean Harrison took the microphone. Today, he said, our university has been taught a lesson, not in mathematics, but in humanity. Genius wears no title, and brilliance bows to no status. The crowd erupted into applause as Samuel walked on stage. He stood there awkwardly, in his faded work uniform, eyes lowered, hands trembling slightly. But there was no shame in him. Only gratitude. Then, from the side of the stage, Professor Emily walked up. The applause died into silence. She looked at Samuel for a long time, the same man she had laughed at, ignored, and humiliated. Then softly, she said, "Samuel, I owe you an apology." Her voice cracked. "I never saw your worth. I never listened. I only saw your uniform, not your mind. But today, you reminded me of something I had forgotten. That respect isn't given by titles, it's earned by truth." Samuel looked up with a faint smile. "I never wanted revenge, ma'am. I just wanted someone to believe that brilliance can exist anywhere, even behind a broom." Tears filled Emily's eyes. The auditorium broke into thunderous applause. Weeks later, a headline appeared on national news. "Janitor solves legendary equation, redefines what it means to be a genius." Samuel didn't leave the university. He stayed. Still cleaned the halls every morning, but now, students stopped to greet him. Some even asked for help with their math problems. Sometimes Professor Emily would quietly sit near his desk and say, "You remind me why I became a teacher." A new plaque appeared on the wall outside the department. It read, "Never underestimate the quiet ones. They might just be solving what you call impossible." In a world obsessed with titles and pride, Samuel proved that true greatness doesn't need recognition, it only needs courage, humility, and heart.